Reach above your head. Feel that catch? That slight resistance in the tissue just below your armpit. The band of tightness that stops your arm from going all the way up. Most people over 40 feel it. Most people ignore it. And I ignored it too, for longer than I should have. But here's what made me stop ignoring it. I started noticing a pattern in my own body, in people I work with, in the faces of friends I hadn't seen in a few years. The changes happening in their faces didn't match the explanations I'd been taught. Jawline softening, cheeks losing their architecture, the tissue under the eyes settling lower. And the conventional reasoning never quite held up, because the people with the best skincare, the most disciplined routines, were showing the same downward drift as everyone else. So I started looking somewhere that cosmetic approaches never look. I went below the neck, below the chest, below the shoulder. And what I found in the armpit, in a muscle most people can't even name, rearranged how I think about the entire face. Press your fingers into your armpit right now. Not gently. Push in with 2 or 3 fingers, deep into the fold where your arm meets your torso. You'll feel something dense, almost ropey. That's the edge of your latissimus dorsi, the largest flat muscle in the human body. It runs from just below your armpit all the way down to your lower back and pelvis. A single sheet of tissue spanning nearly half your trunk. And if you're sitting as you listen to this, that muscle is almost certainly shorter and tighter than it was 20 years ago. The question that started this investigation was simple. Can a muscle in your armpit physically pull your face downward? And the answer involves a system that most conventional facial aging conversations never touch. Thomas Myers, who spent decades mapping what he calls myofascial meridians, the continuous lines of connective tissue that run through the body, identified something that changed how a generation of manual therapists thinks about the body. Fascia, the tissue that wraps every muscle and connects structures to each other, doesn't operate in isolated compartments. It operates in chains. Continuous, mechanical chains where tension in one area transmits force to areas that seem, on the surface, completely unrelated. Dr. Carla Stecco's dissection work at the University of Padua made this visible in a way that anatomical textbooks hadn't. When her team carefully dissected the fascial layers without cutting the connections between them, they found something that should have been obvious but wasn't. The tissue doesn't stop. The fascia surrounding your latissimus dorsi is continuous with the thoracolumbar fascia, a thick, diamond-shaped sheet across your lower and mid-back. That thoracolumbar fascia merges into the posterior layer of the cervical fascia, which runs up the back of your neck. And the cervical fascia connects directly and without interruption to the platysma, the thin muscular sheet that drapes over your jaw, your lower cheeks, and the front of your neck, and to the SMAS layer, which is the structural scaffolding that holds your cheekbones, your midface, and the tissue around your eyes in position. One continuous chain, armpit to face, no gaps in the tissue. Think about that in mechanical terms. Your body operates like a cable system under tension, not unlike the rigging on a suspension bridge. The latissimus dorsi is one of the primary tensioning cables. It anchors at the pelvis and lower spine, wraps around the upper arm, and its fascial envelope feeds directly into the system that suspends your facial structure. When that cable is at the correct length and tension, the load distributes evenly. The structures above, your neck, your jaw, the tissue of your face, sit where they're meant to sit. When the cable shortens, everything downstream receives a different load. And here's where the investigation gets uncomfortable. That muscle shortens in almost everyone, predictably, measurably, over the decades between 30 and 70. The mechanism isn't mysterious, it's postural. Every hour you spend seated, your arms are forward, typing, driving, holding a phone, eating, reading. The latissimus dorsi adapts to this position by shortening. Not dramatically in any given year, but across 20, 30, 40 years of accumulated adaptation, the shortening becomes significant. The tissue loses length it once had, and that lost length translates directly into increased downward tension through the fascial chain. To understand the scale, think of it this way. If you measured the resting length of the latissimus dorsi in a typical 25-year-old who moves regularly, and compared it to the same measurement in a 60-year-old who spent 3 decades at a desk, the difference in tissue length might be only 2 to 3 centimeters. That sounds trivial, but force transmission through fascia doesn't work like a 1-to-1 ratio. Connective tissue amplifies mechanical load across distance. A 2-centimeter shortening at the origin can produce enough force at the terminal point, your face, to shift tissue position by millimeters per decade. And millimeters on a face are visible. Millimeters are the difference between a jaw that looks defined and one that looks soft. Millimeters are what separate the under eye area at 42 from the under eye area at 57. This has been happening in plain sight. That drag, that gradual downward migration of facial tissue that people attribute to gravity, to collagen loss, to quote unquote just aging, a significant portion of it isn't originating at the face. It's being transmitted from below. Now I need to address the place most people look first, because it's the wrong lead in this investigation, and it's worth understanding why. The conventional approach to facial sagging targets the face. Topical retinoids to stimulate collagen, facial exercises to strengthen the muscles of expression, surgical lifts that physically reposition tissue and tighten the SMAS layer. And these interventions do something. Retinoids improve skin quality. Certain facial exercises can modestly improve tone. Surgical lifts produce visible, sometimes dramatic results. But here's the pattern that bothered me. The improvements have a ceiling, and they have a duration. Surgical outcomes, even excellent ones, begin to migrate again within years. The tissue drifts. Slowly, but it drifts. And the explanation given is usually gravity plus continued aging, which is partly true. But if you're thinking in systems, if you're tracing forces rather than treating surfaces, you have to ask, is gravity the only downward force acting on this tissue? Or is there a mechanical load from below that nobody addressed because nobody looked below the neck? The answer, when you follow the fascia, is that the cable system is still under tension. The latissimus dorsi is still short. The thoracolumbar fascia is still transmitting that shortening upward. The intervention addressed the terminal point, the face, without addressing the origin point, the armpit. It's like repainting a wall that's cracking because the foundation has shifted. The paint looks beautiful for a while. If you've ever felt that something about the standard explanations for facial aging didn't fully account for what you were seeing in the mirror, your instinct was picking up on a real mechanical deficit in the model. You weren't wrong. You were looking at the mouth of the river and sensing that the current was coming from somewhere upstream. And upstream is exactly the right frame. Navigating this system is like tracing a river to its source. You start at the face, the delta, where the effects are visible. You move down to the platysma and the SMAS layer, the lower river, where the structural scaffolding is. You continue to the cervical fascia, the middle course, running through the neck. Then the thoracolumbar fascia, the upper reaches, broad and powerful across the back. And finally, the source, the latissimus dorsi, sitting in your armpit, quietly pulling the entire watershed. The problem is that most interventions stop at the delta. They never go upstream. Let me correct something in my own framing here. When I say pulling, I don't mean the latissimus dorsi is contracting and yanking your face down in real time. That would be a different problem and a simpler one. What I mean is that the shortened resting length of the muscle creates a chronic, passive mechanical load on the fascial chain. It's not an active pull, it's a static one, like a cable that's been tightened by half a turn and left there. The structure adapts to the new tension gradually over years. And by the time the effects are visible on the face, the original cause, the shortened lat, has been in its adapted position so long that it feels normal. You don't feel it as tightness, you feel it as your body. That's the scope of this. It's not just your face, it's your neck, your shoulder position, your rib mobility, your breathing mechanics. The latissimus dorsi connects to all of these systems. Its shortening affects all of them. The facial changes are the most visible downstream effect, but they're not the only one. I want to be precise about the evidence quality here. The fascial continuity is well documented. Stecco's dissection work, Meyer's Meridian mapping, and corroborating imaging studies have been published across multiple journals, including the Journal of Bodywork and Movement Therapies and the Journal of Anatomy. What's less thoroughly studied is the specific magnitude of force transmission from the latissimus dorsi to the SMAS layer in living humans. The anatomical connection is clear. The mechanical logic is sound. The clinical observations from manual therapists who release the latissimus and see changes in cervical and facial tissue position are consistent. But I haven't found a randomized controlled trial that isolates this exact chain and measures facial tissue position before and after lat release over 12 months. That study needs to exist. It doesn't yet. So what I'm presenting is a mechanically coherent model supported by anatomical evidence and clinical pattern recognition. It's not a model with endpoint clinical trials behind it. That distinction matters, and I want you to hold it as we move into what you can do about this. Here's where context determines the approach. What makes sense for your body depends on where you are in this pattern. If you spend more than 6 hours a day seated, at a desk, in a car, on a couch, the latissimus dorsi has almost certainly adapted to a shortened position. The first thing that matters for you is restoring length to that tissue. In the most accessible way to do it, uses a doorway. Picture yourself standing in a door frame, your right arm reaching up and behind you, hand gripping the frame at about the height of the top hinge. Your feet step forward through the doorway while your hand stays anchored. Your body rotates slightly away from the anchored arm. And now you're in a position where the entire latissimus dorsi is on stretch, from the armpit, where you can feel the tissue loading, all the way down through the thoracolumbar fascia to the lower back. You stay there. Not for 10 seconds. This isn't a quick stretch. The fascia needs sustained load to change length. 90 seconds minimum, 2 minutes is better. Breathing slowly, letting the tissue accept the position. You'll feel the first 30 seconds as discomfort. By 60 seconds, something shifts. The tissue begins to yield. By 90 seconds, you're in a different position than where you started without having moved your feet. Then the other side. Every day, ideally twice, morning and evening. The doorway becomes the trigger. The stretch follows the doorway. If you're already noticing the facial changes, the softening jawline, the under eye settling, the neck texture shifting, the doorway protocol still applies, but you add something. After the sustained stretch, while the tissue is at its maximum length, you press your fingers into the armpit itself, into the belly of the lat, and apply slow, deep pressure along the length of the muscle toward the lower back. This isn't massage in the relaxation sense. It's a mechanical input. You're creating a shearing force between the fascial layers that have become stuck, or thick is the better word, adhered. You're restoring the gliding surfaces that allow the fascial chain to distribute load evenly, rather than transmitting all the tension in one direction. 3 to 4 minutes per side. It won't feel pleasant. It should feel productive. If you're watching someone you love go through this, a parent, an older relative, and you're recognizing the pattern in their posture, their face, the way their body is gradually folded forward over the years, the same principles apply, but the entry point is gentler. Sustained positioning before active stretching. Lying on their back with a rolled towel placed lengthwise along the spine, arms resting out to the sides, palms up. Gravity does the work of opening the anterior chain and lengthening the lat without any active effort. 20 minutes in this position begins to reverse the postural input of the day. It's not dramatic. It's the accumulation that matters. The same force that shortened the tissue over decades can be redirected to lengthen it back if the input is consistent. What I keep coming back to, and this is the part that sits with me after months of following this chain, is that the face was never the right place to start. The face is where the effects accumulate. The origin is below, behind, in a muscle you can reach right now by pressing into the fold of your armpit. That dense ropey tissue you felt at the beginning of this conversation is the proximal end of a system that terminates at your cheekbones. And this investigation isn't finished, because the latissimus dorsi isn't the only structure feeding tension into this chain. The pectoralis minor, the serratus anterior, the deep cervical flexors, each of these contributes its own mechanical input to the fascial system that suspends the face. I followed one cable to its source. There are others. If you felt that density under your fingers and recognized it as something that's been accumulating in your body for years, if that registered as a mechanical truth rather than an abstract idea, then the doorway is where you start. Not everyone will press into their armpit and feel the connection. Not everyone needs to, but some of you already know exactly what I'm describing. That tension has a terminus.